is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Good morning and welcome to Guardian Radio AM. Today is Wednesday, Wednesday, August 16th. Until after 11 o'clock in the morning. Once again, this is C.A. Newry and I shall be your host for today on this Man Down Mashup Wednesday where we combine Guardian Radio AM and On the Clock with Aaron Green. Of course, we have an excellent guest today. We have Matt Aubrey, who's here from, go ahead.
Organization for Responsible Government, ORG, and representing Access Parliament, a small NGO that emanated from the org space.
Okay, I'll start from there. First of all, let me allow Matt to introduce himself, right? This is the first time he's on Mashup Wednesday, but we have a number of questions we want to pose to him based on what his mandate for his NGO is, right? And so let me have him formally introduce himself. I want to know what this Access Parliament is all about also. And I want to discuss what is the role of an MP inside this conversation. Because I think a number of us are confused as what is the role of an MP and what is local government? Go ahead, Aaron. Sure.
Jessica already told you, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
And one of the reasons I am excited about the conversation is that the Minister of Tourism, Investment and Aviation, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, said that the Davis administration, Davis Cooper implied, of course,
yes,
passed over 100 pieces of legislation before the proroguing of the House. And so I'm hoping that along with what is the role of an MP.
And what happened to those bills and
right,
those stuff?
What were the 100 plus that were passed? What didn't get passed? What happens to what didn't get passed? What's likely to be retabled? And does this mean I have a chance to sneak in a Chickchani bill into the new parliamentary session?
Okay, so let's go straight to Matt, right? So he can formally introduce himself. Producer, cue that clip up because I want Matt to listen to that and then make a comment on that also. So, but I will yield now to you.
Good morning, folks. Thank you so much for having me. It's always great to be here on Guardian. I've been on Aaron's show earlier, never been on this one, so very glad to be here. So my name is Matthew Aubrey. I'm the Executive Director for the Organization for Responsible Governance. We are a registered Bahamian not-for-profit organization. We've been around for about 8 years. And our mission essentially is ensuring that citizens and private sector, small businesses have a voice in the concept of governance, so that they're feeling that their input is meaningful. So at the heart of all of what you just talked about, what is an MP, what were the pieces of legislation, and even drawing on what the conversation on the previous show was about, it all harks back to what are our understandings of the systems of government, the components, and how does that meet our citizen interests? So you person living in a community, what does that mean to you? We know critically that it's an essential part of citizens' role to vote in this system, right? We know, and that's something that historically Bahamians have taken very, very seriously. When you look at the numbers of folks that come out, the percentages of registered voters that do come out in Bahamian elections, it is higher than most other spaces. So you see people coming out in the high 80s or the low 90s even in some instance. The only dip has been the most recent election, and I think I'll put a pin in that. We can come back to it because some of it may have been COVID, but there might have been some other things going on. So what our organization does is not only do we work and talk and discuss and research different types of laws and making sure those laws are transparent and accountable and fair and modern, and most importantly, to the interests of the Bahamian citizens, But we also spend a lot of time talking to and helping citizens to understand their role and their potential impact. The discussion in the last show talked a lot about where people's roles fall and do we believe that things can change. And a lot of our communities, a lot of people in our communities are in really dire straits and have also forgotten about the potential power that their voice can have, not only in their own lives, in their communities, and ultimately in the nation. So we spent a lot of time going into communities. And over the last 6 months, we've been into 8 different islands. We've met with over 1,000 folks. We've met with more than 60 different groups, sitting and talking about how do we reclaim this power? How do you help people to develop that muscle? Because it is a muscle, right? To get involved, to get informed. And these are crucial things. So, and then as we do both of these things, we also realize there needs to be some easy to access bridges for folks and government to dialogue, to communicate, to learn about what's coming up and what do we think about it, and how do those thoughts get considered and heard by government. And so in that space, what we've created, and this is one of the things we'll talk about today, and we're super excited. And really, this is all the child of bright, young, innovative Bahamians that have come up with this. We have a few online tools that help citizens to understand the systems of government, the laws that do come forward, what those laws potentially mean, and even how you feel about certain government services and how they might be able to improve to serve you better. So we have a tool called Access Parliament, which can be found at orgbahamas.com. And you can find us on our Policy Review Center, which is another tool which gives you all the information about laws that are being considered or have been just passed in Parliament. And we also have something called our Citizens Charter, where you can go and follow through a survey to let us know how you're feeling about things that you use in daily life that are government services, like the hospital and NIB and things. So those 3 areas.
Repeat the 3 again.
So we have Access Parliament, which is a tool for you to find out about Parliament, what Parliament, the operations of Parliament, how it works, who your member of Parliament might be, who the senators could be. And it also, if you follow us on Facebook, you'll find different updates of things that are going to be talked about and when people will talk. The second is called the Policy Review Center, and the Policy Review Center gives updated, easy-to-access information about the laws that are being considered in Parliament with a feature so you can actually give your thoughts, whether it be positive, negative, or otherwise, that can be shared directly with government. And then the third component is what we call our Citizens Charter, which helps you to render your thoughts and ideas on how government services can be improved. We've only done a few areas in that one, and you'll see more coming down the line. But these are free, easy-to-access tools that citizens can go and check out on our website at orgbahamas.com, or you can find out, obviously, about these by following us on any of the social media platforms, usually through Org Bahamas.
I want to know, how has the Bahamian citizenry been receptive of your mandate of educating and promoting these agendas? We've been around for 8 years, we've received a lot of encouragement, whether it be people that have formally partnered with us. We have large partnerships with lots of other not-for-profit organizations or civic organizations. We've received a lot of positive feedback. We've also received a number of points of criticism, and we learn and we listen from these things, because what we ultimately believe is that governance should be representative. It should be responsive. It should promote equity. It should adhere to and follow the rule of law. It should be transparent. It should be accountable. It should ultimately satisfy and benefit a person on a day-to-day basis, so you understand and realize why this thing can actually support your growth and development. And that is what's fundamentally spoken about in the preamble of the Constitution. So within that space, helping people to understand the system that governs them, hopefully it starts to reverse the dynamics such that people can feel that it is not that they have to follow that system, but that more they can actually contribute and help that system to develop, grow, and flourish. So what about politics, right? We're a political nation. All right, and I have a clip I want.
It's a political world.
It's a political world, but for some reason the Bahamas is very political. We are diehards. I have my political party I support, and then you promoting good governance, right? Say Organization of Responsible Government promotes good governance, and say that we have a citizen charter. I see you mentioned that, and that we have a responsibility. But I also have a responsibility to my political party.
What?
I'm loyal. But let me set it up. I'm setting up Matt right now. Right? I'm loyal to my party. How can I have good governance if my political party is doing something contrary or not necessarily what you, the organization, would call good governance?
So, is there a clip, or we're going to go right to it?
no,
No,
you
okay,
can,
go.
play the
Sorry,
clip
that,
afterwards.
okay. So we don't see these as opposing ideals. We have to kind of look at what is the current environment. And in the Bahamas, is going through what the world is going through. Things are becoming more and more polarized. We know by research, the IDB did a research study a couple of years ago that showed that public trust, it continues to decline. And specifically in the Caribbean and Latin American sectors, it declines more than it has in other places in the world. And people's understanding that that government may or may not necessarily understand their interests or be acting towards their interest has started to be influenced and is reflective of this increasing kind of battle between the parties. The partisan back and forth, in many ways, when you understand the necessity of it, if we just believe that everybody on either side party really believes their side actually has the answers, and the goal is to get in, because when they do, they'll be able to fix things. That premise, unfortunately, has left us over the last 5 administrations with a switch from one administration to the other to the other. And as our good colleague Tate Adderley says, people are presented with a solution that things are somehow going to be fixed in a 5-year span. And we know that's not realistic. So parties are an essential part of almost every political model in many ways. It's how do you associate with like-minded folks? Hopefully it's divined by more of a philosophical difference between you believe this is a way of approaching things versus that, instead of this is my color T-shirt and this is your color T-shirt. But at its heart, it's a way for folks to assemble, to gather, to bring forward their ideas and work collaboratively to push those forward. When the two-party back and forth, as we see here, is so, it's such a fever pitch, it makes everything politicized. And then people do find themselves in that dilemma that you articulate, that if my party says blank and the other party says, the other position, I must go with this side, or the side I trust must be right. And what we're holding is that citizens and folks that are sitting here watching this, they have a role to be involved, and that role is to discern what is happening for yourselves, to understand how does government use its money, make its decisions, what information does it use?
Money.
Sorry, thank you so much. That is exactly highlighting my point. We all get conscripted into this language. So how is the public's money being used? How are the public interests being served? And what components help to make that happen? So that instead of when the next election comes around, people coming to your door and saying, if you elect me, I'll do X, Y, Z. The stronger position was when somebody knocks to your door, you have a list and say, we want to make sure that Charney Bill is on that platform. We want to make sure that mangoes and ganneps are going to foster in every community. We want to make sure that our kids are getting the education that is going to lead them to be able to manage this very complex world that we've left them. So putting that component in is crucial. And when it doesn't happen, what we see is that government can't make decisions that serve the public interest because they may not have the information from all of our islands and our communities and people on different levels and specters.
You know who was a forward-thinking politician?
Go ahead.
The Honorable Teresa Moxie Ingram. 20 years ago, she would allow me as a women's rights advocate to come on regularly, but particularly before election, to do a series called The Top 10 Questions Every Citizen Should Ask Their Candidate Before they vote. Right, and that's that that's that reverse model.
Right,
Yeah.
and so when we talk about the laws that are passed, We also see a system that doesn't necessarily, at this point, facilitate lots of citizens' involvement. The Organization for Responsible Governance and a number of other organizations have advocated for a more standardized and regularized way of gaining citizen consultation. Consultation sometimes happens. Maybe it's in 2 weeks. Maybe it's in 6 months. Maybe it's town halls. Maybe people say, "Hey, send your opinions to this email." When it's not easy to access and it does not have a consistent understanding of what the expectation of participation would be and what it would mean, then many people raise their hands up and say, "Why would I spoke out at the referendum. Nobody did what I said. I told them what I thought about gambling. They went the other way."
I voted on the song competition. I've never heard the announcement of the winner.
Yes.
So those types of things diminish citizen involvement and make it more, make folks more distrustful.
Yes.
The system is going to work if people feel it can serve themselves. So we need to help people to understand how laws are being made and how these folks that they've elected are going to serve them in order to make sure those laws and the systems and the policies are reflective of the interests of your constituency, your family, your own self. Because then if you see how all of that plays in, you may see feel that your time and your energy, in whether it be voting, going to a town hall, talking to your MP, showing up to let somebody know that a government service was great or not great, pay your taxes, don't hide things at the bottom of your bag in customs. All those things actually can contribute to a better space for yourself, for your family, for your kids, for your community. That dynamic all means that all the pieces have to start to work. And if it's overseen by politics as the most important thing, whether my side gets in or your side gets in many ways you lose the potential to tap into lots of things that we have in the Bahamas, which are talent and resources and intelligence and passion.
Only what's politically expedient is visible, and only what is politically expedient is engaged.
I see we have a caller here, and producer, get that, cue up that clip, play after the caller. And I just want to, it's a political clip, by the way, but I want you to comment on the words used, not necessarily the politics of it. But go ahead, caller, can you hear me? Caller going once? Caller going twice? I know? Okay, now cue that clip up, play that for me. And like I said, right now we're about to go to back to school season, where politicos give back and spend money as part of their campaign or part of their MP role and objective mandate. And I want to like to know if this is good for the Bahamas. And this particular clip, despite the politics of it, right? It explains how a typical Bahamian, and typical, this is my word, view their MP. And I want to know if this is appropriate moving forward, or we need to work towards changing it or capitalizing on it. Go ahead with the clip there, producer.
Yes, good morning. I'm supporting Keith Bear because he never left Jamaica Road area. Praise God, I ain't ashamed to say it. I was hungry. And praise God, Keith Bear came with fruits. All type of fruits, all type of vegetables. Even Chinese cabbage. I never had Bahamian cabbage, only Bahamian cabbage, and he fed the whole nation. And I went around giving them, it was so much vegetables, I gave it to a lady who was sick, who needed them. Keith Bear never leave me. Praise God, my train them had basket. Keith Bear come around and he give us a Mother's Day gift. He cannot take care of the whole country, but he do the best of his ability. When you do good, you don't worry about nobody. A change gonna come. I'm not ashamed to say it. Thank God for the honorable president. My grandmother, Melissa, she sit me on the side of the bed on 8th Street. She said, "Rosalie, I paid the way from you." I remember brothers I couldn't go to YT era. She said, "Vote PLP." A legend, Laura Williams, is my auntie. She said, "Rosalie, vote PLP." And I would say, honorable, full of bread, Davis, the president. He was feeding me for 15 years, y'all hypocrite. He feed everybody in the market. He gives 300 bread, do the best he can. Come on up in there, tell the truth, she's the devil. God has been good to us. Let them know. I want to thank God for all we will come. We're gone. Even a global role, she take her money.
And Matt, it's not that it's a political party. I want to say the sentiments of Bahamians that their MP has helped them generations. So therefore, they are obligated to support them no matter what.
Well,
so that's the commentary I want you to comment on.
Listening to her, what she's talking about, and in this instance, she's talking about a primary need. She felt that she was considered and that her interests and her needs were met, and particularly a primary need. They were fed, right? So that speaks to a few things. It's not any really different than anybody would. You would want to think that if you took the time to pick somebody to represent you, that they would meet needs, whether in her instance being fed, or if you feel like, hey, we want to make sure our neighborhood is getting clean, or that crime is going down, or that the environment is being taken care of, whatever those things are. It is the fundamental interest and desire for somebody who has elected somebody that they are in place to make things better. Like simply, that's a thing. We know that given the complexity of the Bahamas, we know that between an archipelagical state, the polarization of those that don't have and those that have is wide and vast. We know we have many issues that are struggling, and so many folks are not at a point where they feel that their basic needs are being met. People are in crisis. We have levels of poverty that we're not even 100% sure what those levels are, but we just know that it's hard for lots of folks out there. We have a cost of living that is like Manhattan or London, and we have average salary that comes in well below what it would be even realistic to think that you could afford those things. So on a day-to-day basis, people are having to make serious compromises and decisions about how to get by. And that means sacrificing your health sometimes, or the security or opportunity, because of the system that has been in place. So when somebody comes along and says, hey, I can make it better, in whatever way, people are going to be not only receptive, but also you can see a sense of loyalty if that consistently has been the case.
Mm-hmm. Also, I keep telling people, you have to understand how people form their political identities, and that's an extremely important point. Mm-hmm. If you helped me in a fundamental way, it may just be he made the call, and my grandson was able to take his credentials that were good on their own to the right meeting at the right time to the right person. I'm committed to this guy forever. And we think about our grandmothers. We hear stories about our grandmothers and our grandparents, and we question, like, grandmothers have this we can't understand it, relationship with someone we as a young person would perceive as an oppressor. They say, look here, my Grammy was committed to this UBP family. I mean, and then Grammy will show you, let me tell you something. The reason you went to college is because that UBP person say, look here, your child smart, he going to college. A commitment that you, right? And so these help to form political identities that you may not be able to understand without context.
But what you also heard in the clip was a sense of crisis and desperation. Somebody needed to save that woman, right? Somebody needed to save that community. Somebody needed to respond to her direct need. Well, we have a lot of those folks, right? Let's say that currently things are benefiting some folks, but are they benefiting all folks? And those folks that get left behind tend to be those with the least. They tend to be our folks that are struggling economically, those folks in family island communities where they don't have resources, our seniors, our folks with disabilities, our youth, across all levels. There are people who are not feeling that the system is serving them, right? So when we think about this, one of the things we work on in the Organization for Responsible Governance, our most recent project is called Active Citizens Bahamas. Because we've recognized that, coming to somebody who's struggling of, am I going to eat today? Is somebody going to, rob me? Is my kid, I don't even know where my son is out on the streets, all of these things. And you're talking to them about, hey, let's talk about freedom of information. That may not be the most important thing on their plate, right? So thinking about how we help people to change their own circumstances is also crucial. So Active Citizens Bahamas talks to people about that role and the importance of helping to make a change that you can see and touch and get involved in, because that is the beginnings of getting them into an understanding, a more formal system of governance where they can advocate to an MP, work and understand how laws might get passed that ultimately can change their circumstances for the better, or create opportunity for their ultimate self-development and success.
I want to draw back to the clip, and like a snapshot, we can take a look at a system, make an assessment of whether it's working or not, despite what she's saying. In the clip, the woman says, Miss Laura is my cousin, is my family. That's the woman who sells fruit. So we know that she understands the value of fruit and the value of the gift, right, of produce. The woman understands the value of the gift from the MP, right, because she's connected to that world. But at the same time, what type of system is this? She related to the woman who does sell fruit. She don't need fruit. She don't need the fruits. She got access to the fruit. She needs something different. It takes me to my cousin Vera from Palmetto Point, Savannah Sound, in the clip when the Governor General went to give her a fruit basket, right, for her 100th birthday. And she said, child, I like money, right? And we say, oh, and, Cousin Vera, behave. Cousin Vera come from the fruit basket. She come from Central Eleuthera. She don't need no fruit basket from the food store from Nassau. She got the fruit basket in the backyard. But right, like just a snapshot.
But even that switch, her impetus, or what she was focusing on, was that things were going to get better with this one person.
Yeah.
What we have to kind of remind ourselves is, no matter who's in charge, there is always a government. And those government services and policies and functions should support and serve you. It should not be that because you've put one person in place that they're somehow going to facilitate that the system works for you. The system should work for you, and the person in place should ensure that it continues to, and that it ultimately you're aware and it's aware of how it responds to those needs in a direct community or to a direct person.
Right, and it shows us that people shouldn't have to rely or be made to feel that their only resort is charismatic. Is that charismatic personality culture, right? Or charismatic charity. That's the word, the frame. Right. Charismatic charity. Structural reform is what people should be expecting from their parliamentarians, not this idea that that's the man and he could fix it.
Right. So before we go to the call, let's go to ask Matt some short answer questions. Just short answer questions. What is the job of an MP? No, I can give you all.
All of these and I'll answer. Okay.
What is the job of an MP? What is the job of a constituent? And where does local government fit into all of this? And right after you answer that, we'll go to the caller.
What about my 100 bills? I got 100 bills. I won't put them on the table.
So, and people can go to orgbahamas.com/accessparliament or accessparliament.org, and you can check this out, because there are sections that tell you very specifically what the role of an MP is, what the role of a senator is, what the functions of government are, what the components of government are, and how they're supposed to work together. But ultimately, MPs are identified to represent constituencies on national issues and policies. Their principal role is to develop and work towards legislative reform, change, enhancement, whatever it might be. But policy is principally what MPs are in place for. When you have you don't have a local government representative like we see here in New Providence, then the expectations for the MPs can become quite broad. And so we've had conversations and sit-downs with MPs who are talking about struggling with time to go to every funeral, to receive requests as basic as I need somebody to come in and paint my yard or clean up my yard or paint my shed, to I'm having struggles with getting this thing through, getting it from the Registrar General, get this document from the passport, whatever it might be. So the breadth of what we're now looking and expecting our MPs to manage is quite vast. And when you look at that, and I did so with other members when we looked at the possibility of local government and what that would look like here in the Bahamas, in Nassau, it became almost unrealistic to think that one person in the amount with the resources and even the salary that's applied would be able to effectively achieve all of these. And some folks are better at one thing, some folks are better at others. Some MPs have a skill in a certain area, others are challenged to do that. And when you talk to people across all the constituencies, you'll get a very wide stretch from, just like your last clip, people who believe these are phenomenal people that have been doing everything in the community, to I haven't seen this person in 5 years and I don't know if they even know what my interests are. Some of those fall on political lines. I believe the person I believe in my party and the person I voted, I think they're doing a good job. And other of those are very specific to what's happening in those communities. The issues that tend to happen in the communities are the same issues, right? So there's flooding in Pinewood and Adelaide and Yamacraw, and that's a struggle, and now always been a struggle. Crime is up in certain areas. Access to fresh water in Centerville and Bainstown and things. These are challenges that continue regardless of who is sitting in the seat. Those things, and that's reminding us that citizens' role, which is your final question, the other question, constituents' role, is to be an active part of the process. So communicating your issues, going to find and get information from your MP about what are the upcoming policies, what are the programs in place that government is doing, what are the new priorities, and what does it mean to us, is going to be quite important. Let's take the caller before we lose them, but I'll talk a little about that after we come back.
Go ahead, producer. Patch the caller through. Caller, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Newry, how you doing?
Doing well.
Listening to your guest just now. I heard Miss Green mention about the fruits and so forth. Like, no, you've been by my house before and see the avocados, right? I checked with Solomon and Super Bowl. You're one selling an avocado for $3, the next selling an avocado for $4. Now, I got 5 trays down here loaded. A guy came down, he said, how much for a spark, how much for an avocado? I said, I got to go to the vet with the dog. Give me $1 each. He said, I need one about 10. I said, give me 10. Take 10. He gave me $20, which means I sold my pair for $2, was given away for $1. So we could feed our people here in our country. If we all just take time and grow things, we could feed our people and we don't have to import nothing, especially when it comes to fruits and vegetables. We need to start growing our food instead of crabgrass, bougainvillea, hibiscus. Have a good day.
No. Maybe not crabgrass, but bougainvillea and hibiscus. Keep growing that. Sparky, shh. That's value. I can't talk more about it on air, but keep growing the bougainvillea and hibiscus. That's all I could say.
One of my also concern is we're doing wonderful things on Bay Street, right? We see we are doing some demolishing.
Yeah.
And my question is, whose responsibility is it to educate the public as to what is happening?
Right.
Should I demand and push back, say, hey, how come you wouldn't tell me this is happening? Or again, because it's my political party, my job is to defend.
Well, and I think right. So I think that's the challenge is things are moving at a very, very quick pace in the country. A lot of things are happening, and the time for people to understand it and realize how it may affect them, as well as what opportunities may lie within them or what challenges might come that might inhibit them, is usually not sufficient, as things happen so quickly. So you might be aware of a new initiative or a new policy or a new law that's being brought up in the House of Assembly, and the Parliament may vote on it within 2 to 3 weeks. In the course of most people's lives, your ability to sit down, listen, and learn to it, it requires some time. It requires some energy. And just reading a newspaper article may not be sufficient. Seeing what people forward you on social media, again, may not give you the time for you to make your own decision and opinion on what that is. And more importantly, where, if you have that thought and opinion, would you then put that opinion? So what we've realized is we don't think that there are sufficient mechanisms and time and allotments for people to be able to get involved and learn these things and provide that. So our hope is to try and get people where they are in their communities, give them a sense of this information. So we had a program called Freedom Schools, which is a civic education program, which we've done all over as well, that talks and teaches people about just the basic civic elements of what is the Bahamas government. We spent some time talking about the preamble of the Constitution and helping people to understand that that speaks about them and their self-development and growth, but it also speaks about a shared responsibility. That in order to make this thing happen, it can't just be, we're going to wait till my party fixes it. And that there is not a realistic environment where that happens now. Nowadays, people need to be involved. Your interests and your ideas and your thoughts are crucial. When we do see things like, let's say, new development happening on Bay Street, the question becomes, how many people understand what that might mean to them? And how were those ideas considered? We had a lot of plans. We had the Sustainable Nassau Plan. There was Downtown Partnership that put together plans. There have been plans from one administration and the other. There were things that were referred to in the draft of the National Development Plan. Which of those is now the thing we should all be counting on? Because when it goes from one group to another group, you may lose track of what happened and when it's going to happen, and more importantly, the sequence by what one thing means to something else. Mm-hmm. So we see a lot of interesting things happening with the port, and that's created movement. But what does that mean for the residents in those areas? What does that mean for local business folks that they feel like I can get involved? When we come out of a COVID circumstance, what we learned is, which we already have known, is how important having a sustainable local economy means to the Bahamas. When we are entirely reliant upon external dollars from tourism or even from financial services, it's not really helping the majority of Bahamians to sustain and manage their own selves. Mm-hmm. And so we also know, though, that for a small business, and we have a lot of encouragement programs, we have the Access Accelerator and other types of initiatives. Bahamas Development Bank is doing some really cool things that are saying, hey, this is a time to try and make that side gig a little bit more formal. Let's do something so you can have another level of income. Maybe you have your own job that's not paying you as much, but you might have a thing on the side.
Professionalize your hustle.
But that also requires a risk. And you've got to be real confident before you take that risk, before you put your money or put yourself into a circumstance where you're borrowing money. Mm-hmm. And that confidence is dependent upon trust in a system that supports you. So we saw the Procurement Act was not only passed in 2021, but was then repealed and repassed here in 2023. And the components of that speak to, and part of the language says, hey, you, as a small business person, whether it be a woman business or a family island business or a youth-owned business, you may have a better opportunity to get these types of government contracts. But also part of that law is we will tell people who was awarded those contracts so that it's very transparent, and you know that if you put together a good bid, you might have a shot of getting this thing. But when last government and this government have not started to initiate the showing of those awards of contracts, what does that tell to the small business person? Maybe I'm a wait. Maybe I'm not sure that it's really, I don't want to put myself out with the limited resources I have to put myself in a space where I might do all this work and nothing comes of it because I'm not wearing the right shirt, or I don't know the right person, or my MP is not in the governing party. Mm-hmm. Those factors should not be relevant. It should be, is this government program speaking to your particular interests? And is the government doing what it needs to build your trust and confidence so you will take the risk?
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break right now. This is Guardian Radio AM. It's a mash up Wednesday, man down. Of course, we have Aaron Green here with me with On the Clock. And we have Matt Aubrey here from ORG. But we'll be right back. We'll continue this discussion where Aaron will take the lead because she has a couple of questions she wants to pose to Matt. But we'll be right back.
Good day, Bahamas. Join the Guardian Group of Companies in the coverage of the 19th World Athletics Championships in Budapest, Hungary from August 19th to 27th. We'll be on the ground live. This one is being brought to you by Island Games, Kalina, Nassau Motors Hondas, Nassau Motors Chevrolet, Bahamas Financial Services, Nagico, and New Life Vegetation and Cell Food. 11 Bahamian athletes will be in competition. Shawnee Miller-Uibo is back after having a baby. She'll be in action in the women's 400 meters. Stephen Gardner, he'll be in action in the men's 400 meters. Anthony Strong, she'll be the only athlete running 2 events. She'll be in action in the women's 100 and 200 meters. Devin Charlton, women's 100 meter hurdles. Charisma Taylor, women's triple jump. Rima Ottomore, women's javelin. Laquan Nan, men's long jump. Shaquem Hall Smith, men's 400 meters. Donald Thomas, men's high jump. And Terrence Jones, men's 100 meters and 200 meters. Alonzo Russell will also be in action. He'll be in the men's 400 meters. So that's the 19th World Athletics Championships from August 19th to 27th in Budapest, Hungary. You don't want to miss this one, folks.
Okay, school bag, books, pencils, uniform. Oh, Lord. And I gotta buy snacks too?
The Guardian Media Group and AML Foods want to help families in need with our first ever Back to School Snackathon. What's a snackathon? Well, we want to help by assisting in donating school snacks to children that may need them as they head back to school this year. To be a part of our snackathon, all you have to do is shop at your favorite Solomon Superstore or Fresh Market. At the store, you can donate your pre-existing loyalty points, or you can donate cash directly at the register. Every single penny will go towards purchasing snacks that will be donated for distribution by the Bahamas Feeding Network and Hands for Hunger. Together, we can ensure that every child that opens their backpack this year will have a snack and a smile.
Get involved, get involved. Get involved, get involved.
Good morning and welcome back to Guardian Radio AM on this Man Down Mashup Wednesday with On the Clock and Guardian Radio AM. In studio with Mr. Newry and I is Matt Aubrey from Organization for Responsible Government, and Matt is telling us, sharing with us some of the functions of a tool in Org's toolkit called Access Parliament that enables the average citizen to understand more about the function and systems of Parliament and all kinds of questions that follow, like what is the role of an MP? How does an idea this is the question I wanted to throw out, from cabinet to the official gazette, how are laws created? But we don't have enough time to sit into that just now. Mr. Newry has a question that has to get into the discussion. One of the reasons why I was excited about this conversation, on the 15th of August, The Guardian printed an article, DPM we will lead as we see fit. And in there, Chester Cooper, the Minister for Tourism, Immigration and Aviation, because we don't have a Deputy Prime Minister in our Constitution, said, quote, "We've accomplished more than 100 pieces of legislation passed in the House of Assembly," I imagine, since the 2021 win. And so I wanted to ask, with Access Parliament, the tool, can a citizen look at a list of those bills that were passed?
No, it would be our closest place to be able to send people to look at bills would be on the Policy Review Center. So orgbahamas.com/Policy Review Center. And in doing so, you'll be able to see over the last legislative session a number of the bills, not everyone, but a number of the bills that were put forward, some that were passed, some that have been tabled and not passed. I think it's also important, we do also, as part of, Org is not trying to set ourselves up as the alternative to going to a government website. A government website, the expectation is if it's good and it gives the information, then you should go to that spot.
Is there a government website?
There is a website called laws.bahamas.gov.bs that gives, up to 2022, a list of the bills that have been passed.
That's awesome, but it's not helpful at all. What I want to know is...
I'm
not saying you're not being helpful.
I'm saying people wanting to learn and look back at what was passed in 2022, 2021, those lists, as per this website, and I couldn't say that they're inclusive, are probably your most comprehensive way to get just a top-down list of here's what those things are. That doesn't mean much to the day-to-day person. So I could say 100 pieces of legislation were passed, But I also know that in the last administration, a lot of those were amendments to certain things.
Right.
They were technical bills. They were bills that there were acts that related to helping us to be more in compliance with certain federal things. There was the law that allowed the government to tap into the central bank from a lending perspective.
Right.
So the substance of the actual bills, not the number, is probably the most important conversation, and for folks to feel like I want to know about that thing.
Right. So is there like the official Gazette? Do they have a website? Do they have a page on the government website? Is it real time, and does it include that information that you just shared and like other information I have? So 100 plus were passed. I also want to know, well, what were the bills that weren't passed? And does the House of Assembly require, as a formal procedure, a documentation of whether they intend to retable and a reason why it was not passed within the prior session?
The shortest answer to the whole interview, no. The Gazette is not necessarily in real time. There is a page on the website that you can go to and you can see certain ones. I know there was a lag, and I haven't looked at it in this last couple of weeks, but there was a lag from what was being presented, and it wasn't always easily accessible or clear. A lot of times the government websites will stall. You sit and wait and wait and wait. And what we know is when people wait longer than, I think the average is 15 seconds for a page, to a lot of people move away. They stop looking, or they look for it somewhere else. There are a lot of laws that people can find, and you can see, oh, this is the act, but because it's not necessarily presented sequentially, you might look for Procurement Act, and you're going to find Procurement Act 2017 instead of Procurement Act, 2021 instead of Procurement Act 2023. And if you're not, as a person, aware that these things were replaced, you might think, well, then that's the law.
Yeah.
And even in our analysis, sometimes when we look at things, we'll find information and we're not 100% clear what was replaced and why was it replaced. So that archive is not necessarily easily available, and a lot of it is in people's minds. It hasn't been reflected places. So that becomes a lot of what fuels discussions about why this law passed, what it was coming from. And the truth is, the best way for us to keep people informed is to have very clear tools and very clear opportunities to learn about upcoming legislation, to register your thoughts about it at meaningful times, usually earlier rather than later, and for also follow-ups to say what was not done, what could possibly be done, why were certain decisions made. A lot of that may not serve everyday people's interests, but at least having it as a place where you could go to and look as a record would help people to keep a sense of why this thing was moving forward. Whether that be in relationship to a manifesto that a government has put forward, like the Blueprint for Change or the People's Manifesto, I forget what the last one was, or something that would be an overarching document, which is what we always support and promote, like the National Development Plan, which you could see, okay, here's where we're addressing ease of doing business issues, right? So the Commercial Enterprises Bill that's being discussed right now as potentially being repealed, the language that if somebody picks up the paper and reads says, well, this is in the bill, it says that people should just be able to automatically get work permits. That's not what the law said. What the law said is there's a requirement for, and this was trying to facilitate a better process for somebody coming in and making a business opportunity, to say if you put a request in and you have not received your response by this point, then it's assumed that you get the thing.
Let's just stick a pin. Every time that's said aloud, I have to say this is that's almost as ridiculous as what I'm going to say when you finish.
Right. But that means that the law said that government has to be able to respond in a particular period of time, because, again, somebody is coming and saying, I'm going to do a business venture, and I what we don't want is I put something in and I haven't heard 6 months, 7. So if 14 days is too short, then maybe it's 21 days, and that's what you now figure government can respond to. But to take the whole thing out because it is that doesn't necessarily support the ultimate goal, which is we need businesses to come in, start going, get money, contribute to the economy, build businesses and jobs and all the things that work forward. That's the nature of what a law like that would present. But the day-to-day citizen may not understand when that was passed, what was discussed, where and why that idea was there, unless you saw what the end goal of it all is outside of just because my party told me yes or no.
Before we move on, right, I just want to close this off by saying, Mr. Newry, I don't know if you heard me yesterday begging the Minister of Tourism, Investment and Aviation to don't use those two phrases in the same sentence ever again. We'll govern how we see fit, and it is what it is. Because after this conversation today, sir, you can't just get up and say we passed 100 pieces of legislation in the House before we prorogue. It is what it is, unless you can provide me with proof or that evidence is easily accessible to the average person. Because right now, it is what it isn't.
Right. Well, and I think it's also the discussion is about impact. And so to Mr. Newry's point earlier, if it's such a political environment, if my party says things are good, then I'm going to say it's good. And if the other party says things are not, then I'm going to go that way if that's who I follow. The truth is somewhere in the middle. And citizens need to understand and learn that for themselves so they can make decisions of how they use their time, their energy, their vote, their resources in a way that they feel will make the biggest difference in their lives, in the lives of their communities, and ultimately in the lives of the nation that they may leave to their children, right? So how we help people to move and be able to see this comes from a very political space and this is what it is really important. So to your point, finding neutral, reliable places where you can go and get information, where you could read the bill for itself. We as a not-for-profit have limited resources. We have 5 people that work and they do an incredible job, way beyond what their job descriptions are. So something like a bill comes out, the Parliamentary Services Bill comes out. We then start to put it up. We want to make sure it's up as soon as we get it. We want to then start to pull apart and let people understand what do these pieces mean. Not whether it's good or bad, but what is the implication? If parliamentarians become more independent, fantastic. Doesn't that mean that there'll be a place that counters maybe the power of the executive, and isn't that part of what democracy is about? We need to help people take the time to understand that and then give their own thoughts. Does that make sense? Is that something we want to believe? Parliament is moving at a pace where they've passed it. It was in, it was out, it's done. And this is a good thing. How do we help people to reconcile that their thoughts and their ideas have a bearing? Maybe it's through their MPs. Maybe it's through standardized consultation mechanisms. Maybe it's going on the Policy Review Center and saying, this sounds really good, I really like it, but let's make sure that we have citizens on the commission to represent and make sure Parliament services are being done the right way. Any of those things are wonderful. It's just, how does that information get to somebody who's making the decision? Because they need to know.
Okay, let's see if we can squeeze this caller in. Producer Patrick's caller through. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me? Caller going once? Caller going twice? Okay. Recently, we just appointed, I think that's the right appropriate word, a new Governor General.
Hasn't happened yet.
That hasn't happened yet. Right? He started September 1st.
September 1st. And
yes,
so the
right?
process of that.
Process.
There was a recommendation put forward.
It is what it is.
And
We
I
will
was-
govern as we see fit. She's the Governor General.
And I wanted to know the process. Is there a process of where the Bahamian people understand what's happening? The appointment, how they selected the names, make it public, or we just sit and wait and whatever the conclusion is, it is what it is.
Fundamentally, in the selection of the Governor General, as dictated, the citizens' role is not really clearly outlined, right? And again, as has happened, parties have moved in, and as those parties have taken place, they've selected persons that represent the Governor General, and it's not clear, what the conditions are as to why one is moving forward. But in this instance, it seems people are very favorable for the selection and will go forward. The thought, though, that there's better understanding of how the process happens, what this role is crucial. People understand what the Governor General does, what MPs do, and what the Parliament does, means you understand the basic elements of the system that you are not only a part of, but ultimately has a strong influence whether your quality of life, your opportunities, how you can succeed. And so we at org always say, get informed and get involved. And that's crucial. So folks can go to orgbahamas.com or follow us through our Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn through Org Bahamas. And we would love to get your thoughts, ideas, and hopefully give your feedback on how you think about these issues and the tools we've offered.
I'm going to have you on my show soon so we could delve into them 100 bills. I like that commercial enterprise policy. If I commit a crime and y'all don't catch me in 2 weeks, then no crime has been committed. I free to go. I love it.
People say it, hear the music. Guardian Radio AM, CA Newry. Have a beautiful day.